Okay. So we are live now. We're going to give people a few seconds to trickle in. And let's share the screen and pull this bad boy up. Seeing that all right, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right. You ready to get rolling?
Let's do it.
All righty. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. My name is Andrew Barry. I am with HitTrax In Motion Systems. In Motion Systems is the developer of HitTrax, the data capture and simulation device. I'm sure many of you are familiar with us now, but if you're not, we are a tracking system that captures batted ball, pitch ball, catcher metrics in terms of exit velocity, launch angle, projecting distances onto MLB stadiums, college stadiums, for all age groups. We have a number of systems out there. I know there will be a number of customers joining this talk today. One of our longtime customers is here with me from Driveline Baseball is Jason Ochart. Jason is also with the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't know how you manage your time with all of this going on, especially through everything that's happening this year. But Jason, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And like I said, I know you've been a huge power user and an advocate for HitTrax in the past. So I'm excited to have you on here.
Sure thing, Andrew. I appreciate it. And, I tell people often, HitTrax is one of the best tools you could use as a player or a coach, and especially if you're trying to implement any sort of data-driven training. And, when I got hired at Driveline in 2016, that was really the only tool we had. It was a HitTrax. And over the years, we've learned really how to leverage it and how to, use it to get our players better. And I've probably called you about 1,000 times with questions. So I appreciate it. It's been a great relationship, and I'm excited to kind of talk about it.
I like it. Well, let's get into it. So what do we got on the agenda?
Yeah, so I always like to start presentations with an outline. I'm a note taker, so for you note takers out there, this will sort of be the 5 main topics we go through. We're going to start with just assessing hitters, so kind of getting the baseline and how we do that with the HitTrax. We'll talk about tracking progress as you continue to train with your guys over time. We're going to talk about the big 3 of hitting. So the big 3 are essentially the 3 buckets that we look at when we look at the skill of hitting, and we'll talk about what those are, how we measure those with HitTrax, and then how we train them with with the tools that we have available today. Then we'll talk about competitions and training. If you know about Driveline and our sort of system and process, you know that we're huge on competitions. So we'd love to get guys to compete with one another, to compete with themselves. And I think it's a huge sort of hack for skill development is getting guys to compete. And tools like HitTrax make it really easy because you're getting that feedback. It's in your face, and you can kind of pin 2 guys up against each other and let them go, let them go to war. And I think that's an incredible way to develop skill. And at the end, quickly, I want to talk a little bit about some research that we've been able to do with HitTrax data and some other technologies that we've been paired with HitTrax. So it's pretty exciting to talk about that. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it, Andrew.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a quick note. If there are questions, I know we have the chat on the Pathwell on the website before you enter the Zoom. So I have Elena from HitTrax is going to be kind of monitoring that chat. So if you have questions, try and direct them there. and she'll be able to answer most HitTrax specific questions. And then she'll also be compiling as many of those as she can that we'll address at the end, maybe carry over to our booth. So yeah, no, I'm excited for it. I think, before you kick off, it's a lot of people now are using data in their player development, and now they're kind of finding ways to help players improve that. And competition is a big piece of that. Really being able to get the juices flowing, and it actually helps some adrenaline get you rolling. So, all right, we'll kick it off.
Yeah, and I think over the years, Andrew, I've been able to go to a lot of different facilities and teams and whatnot, and a lot of the teams that have HitTrax, they oftentimes will just put it on entertainment mode and just have it be on during BP and not really collect data. And I think you're really missing out on an extremely powerful tool, and some of the features that this technology has really help sort of you as a coach understand your player, train them and put them in sort of focus areas and track progress over time. And it's such a powerful tool if you leverage it correctly. So I'm excited to kind of go through our process and hopefully you guys can have some takeaways. So to start it off, first thing, when you get with a hitter, you want to assess where they're at. So sort of the equation when you sit down with a player is understanding, okay, where are you now and where do you want to be? So the first question I always ask a hitter when I get with them is what are your goals, right? So what kind of player do you want to be? What kind of hitter do you want to be? And where do you want to end up? And almost always it's, I want to be in the big leagues. I want to play, at the highest level. But some guys say, my long-term goal is that, but my short-term goal is I want to get a scholarship, or I want to make my varsity team. I want to, play Division I baseball, whatever it is. That's kind of where we start. And with HitTrax over the years, we've been able to collect enough data to where we can sort of tell the player where they are in comparison to their goals. So as a coach, I'm working for you as a player, and I want to know where you want to be. And that's where we'll start. And these tools allow us to be a little more precise with that. So we'll generate an assessment and we'll be able to tell the player precisely, okay, right now, this is where you're at. And you want to be a big leaguer. This is what big leaguers do. This is what their batted ball profile looks like. This is how hard they hit the ball. This is how consistent they are. And that's true of, like I said, if you want to be a D1 player, we can tell you this is generally how hard they hit the ball, so on and so forth. But that sort of conversation really lays the foundation for the program. And the beauty of a data-driven assessment is that you can create goals that are objective and focus areas that are custom and individualized to the player. And I put on here, sometimes these are uncomfortable conversations. And I think a lot of coaches can resonate with this because I don't want to generalize here, but I think a lot of players that we meet with and we do sort of our first meeting with have a very unrealistic sense of reality. So players aren't always the best self-evaluators, to be completely honest. And I think the beauty of data-driven assessments is that it is what it is. So you could show them and a guy will come in and say, man, I don't know why I'm not playing, or I don't know why I don't have any scholarship money or offers. And you can say, look, you're not hitting the ball hard enough, or you're too inconsistent, so on and so forth. And it creates those uncomfortable conversations that sometimes players need to hear. Sometimes you need to tell them, look, you're far from where you want to be. So let's get to work. And it can be sort of a reality check for some players, which I think is powerful in sort of generating motivation and getting guys to buy in and get ready to work.
So what do you do? Talk to me about an assessment. A player comes in, what's a baseline for you? Like, what is a minimum sample size you want to get a first-time evaluation on a player?
Yeah, like we want to have at least 100, 150 swings. So 2-3 days of data. And we have some tools in R&D that can help kind of expedite that process. But if it's a professional hitter, a lot of times they'll have like in-game data that we can use. But if it's someone that is brand new and they're just kind of starting from scratch, we'd like to have at least 2-3 days worth of data. And we generally do that off of a pitching machine too, or at least firm velocity, so it's sort of game-like, because we want to know what they're going to do between the lines. So yeah, the general idea is like get a baseline measurement of things that matter. And I think it's powerful because you can sort of go back to that baseline as you work with the player, and you kind of reassess, after a couple of weeks, after 6 months, after a year, you always have that sort of snapshot of where they started. And it's really helpful to be able to reference that with your players and let them know how far they've come, because you can forget sometimes when you're just kind of focused on the now. So as far as getting more granular into what we actually measure, HitTrax, if you're not familiar, it's a launch monitor that picks up batted ball data. So the cameras, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a set of OptiTrack cameras and an LED board that could pick up the incoming pitch. It'll tell you the speed of the incoming pitch, the location, and then when you hit the ball, it'll tell you the exit velo and the angles that the outgoing batted ball is going at. And the thing that's really powerful about batted ball data is that it's agnostic to style. And I think as a coach, and I'm guilty of this as well, sometimes we kind of fall victim to aesthetics, and especially now with players that are getting so much video feedback, they often try and look pretty, but pretty doesn't matter if you're going to take your pretty swing 3 times and head back to the dugout. At the end of the day, it's function over form, and batted ball data is what it is, and it's real. So it's kind of the reality that we can learn from a player when they come in and hit, and we can figure out, okay, what's working, what's not. And sometimes it's not pretty, or it might not fit your sort of mold for your aesthetic. But at the end of the day, what matters is how you're performing and how you're hitting the baseball.
And I think one of the things, before you keep rolling, that you guys at Driveline, and you specifically, have done great, is taking this data and not turning it into something that creates a robotic hitter. But that style piece is huge, right? Because athletes and just people are built differently. So, you look at a guy like Hunter Pence is obviously, he's the most obvious example, but, these players are athletes, and the ability to, if they're putting out good data and it's consistent, we don't need to change everything and have every movement be the same for each of these guys if they're getting the key points and are able to produce the numbers that they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the performance is the bottom line. And I think that you'll never be able to tell that a hitter trained at Driveline, so to speak. Like I really try to avoid having, like you said, a robotic sort of cookie cutter swing. And if you watch a big league game, like, you're likely to see 18 different sort of styles, right? From setup to stride length to I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but at the end of the day, every hitter is a little unique. And by focusing on batted ball data, you sort of allow them to discover their own best style. And I think that's a powerful tool, powerful sort of outcome from using this sort of approach. So as far as what we actually measure, so quality of contact, so it gives us exit velocity and launch angle data. And I think those 2 metrics get misunderstood, and they kind of think that just means we're trying to, hit the ball as hard as we can straight up in the air. Using exit velo and launch angle is much more complex than that, especially with a HitTrax. So we can look at not just average exit velo or max exit velo, we can look at different splits. So on the right here, we have sort of like our original batted ball report from a couple years ago. And you can see that we look at, exit velocity on pitches on the outer third. We'll look at exit velocity on breaking balls. We'll look at their average compared to their peak, or we'll look at, how they change exit velo based on which part of the field they're hitting at. So it's a lot more complex than just looking at average. You can kind of, really dig in and get some good insights into the player by looking at different variations of exit velo. Launch angle is the same. Some of the things we look at are line drive percentage. So not really their average launch angle, but how consistently are you hitting balls at between 5 and maybe 25 degrees. We can look at launch angle by field. So that one's really interesting, looking at what your launch angle is to the opposite field versus pull. So a lot of hitters have high launch angles to the opposite field, a lot of flares, a lot of fly balls, and a lot of ground balls to the pull side. So giving that example, it kind of explains why average launch angle is maybe not the best metric, because you might have a hitter that hits a ton of high fly balls to right field, a ton of ground balls to pull side, and then you look at their average launch angle and it's good, but it's simply because they have sort of too high end ranges there. So looking at launching up by field is a pretty good way to kind of get some information on your hitter. And we look at consistency. So we know hitting, it's a tough skill. Like it's about being consistent. It's about hitting the center of the balls often, and it's not as much about high end range when you do connect. It's also important to make consistent contact, and HitTrax is really helpful in measuring that.
Yeah, I would say the two stats, if you're familiar with our system, that kind of feed into that I know you like, are the hard hit average and the LPH, what we call line drives plus hard hits, which, your hard hit average is how many times do you hit a ball in the top 10% of your highest exit velocity. So if your peak is 100, how many times are you hitting it 90 plus? Which I know you've talked about before, and that combined with the LPH, hitting hard hit balls at a line drive trajectory can be pretty good indicators to go off of.
Yep. A couple other things that we can measure is your zone coverage. So we can get an understanding of where a hitter's strengths are in the strike zone and maybe where they struggle. So we can look at just batted balls on the top third of the zone or the inner third, outer third, whatever, and start to learn a little bit more about the hitter. And then we can either start to patch those holes if there's a weakness, or we design their approach sort of around their strengths. And that's something we can learn about a hitter in like I said, 2-3 days, and kind of get an idea of their strengths. And it's surprising how many hitters don't know what their strength is and where they do the most damage and where they don't do damage. And that ties into approach. So understanding swing decisions, know when you're in leverage counts where you should be looking, where's your nitro zone, where do you do damage, where do you hit the ball on the ground, and point of contact. We love the point of contact tool, and we're going to show that later. But it gives you feedback, sort of like an aerial view of where you're making contact, and that ties into approach with knowing, when are we trying to get fastballs out front, when are we trying to back them up to give ourselves a better chance at off speed, and it's something we can practice and drill with our players. So again, the goal is to determine your developmental focus for the player and then set sort of targets. We call them KPIs, key performance indicators. And the thing I want to point out here was that we have all this information, and for players especially, it can be overwhelming. So our approach is to give each player a maximum of 2 KPIs. So we're giving them 2 sort of metrics to chase that we have assessed, and we know that are important for that player's development. So it might be line drive percentage to the opposite field, or it might be launch angle on balls in the lower third for guys that are hitting a lot of ground balls on low pitches. It might be performance against breaking balls, or it might be max exit velo for someone that's on a pure bat speed program. But giving them just sort of blinders and give them 1 or 2 focus areas really helps, because you can look at these reports, there's a lot there, and if a player isn't sort of guided by their coach towards towards something to chase, I think it can be a little overwhelming. So we always set 2 KPIs, and then we track and monitor them over time. And on the right here, you can see this is a session comparison report that's within HitTrax. So you can look at how this player did on August 13th, and then just go back and compare that to June 5th. And you can see on the right, you have trend percentage. So where guys or how that guy has improved since then. And this is extremely powerful for kind of generating buy-in and motivation for a player. And when you show them that the work they're doing is yielding results and they're improving, that's how you get them to buy in and kind of, keep working. And this chart down here in the bottom is a good visual. You can see on the y-axis, like the higher these lines are, the harder that they're hitting balls. So you can just kind of see the orange was before and the yellow is now. And then underneath that really quick, and then I'll hand it over to Andrew, you can see this is within track, a screenshot from our training software, Driveline. We could set goals based on exit velo or batted ball data. So we have some hit ball harder, kill infielders. This particular hitter was hitting the ball too high, so we were trying to get him to actually lower his launch angle. So we can set goals within track, and then those things just automatically get tracked over time, so we can just kind of check in with the player and see if they're progressing towards their target.
I just noticed this now. Every goal here was failed. You might have, I don't know,
Yeah.
Needs a little bit more work apparently. The only thing I was going to add at the top there, Jason said, that's comparing one session directly. You can see the 2 date ranges. The first one was on June 5th. The second session was on August 13th. And yeah, that launch angle report, the bottom horizontal axis is launch angle in 5-degree increments. So you can see that orange line from the first session is his average exit velo, and as the launch angle increases, it trickles down just strictly. I mean, you can imagine this just from bat path. Whereas that yellow line from the second session 3 months later, you start to see kind of a peak in that velocity at 10, 15, 20 degrees rather than a 0 or a -5, -10 degree mark. Quick question before we go on to the next one. What do you, when you do comparison over time, are you looking more so session by session, or are you looking at collective data?
We'll usually do collective. So I'll look at the last, week compared to maybe your first 2 weeks. That's usually how we do it. And it makes the most sense, I guess, from like a sample size perspective. Yeah. And it depends too. Like if we have a player, sometimes we'll have guys that come in and they're just there for a week. That's a little different than a player that comes in every year that we've been training for a couple of years. So the larger the sample size, the better, but that's basically how we do it. And then I put on here, use competitiveness. I wanted to touch on that too. I mean, these athletes, whether they're, 12-year-olds or big leaguers, they're hyper competitive, and we can use these tools to sort of set goals and make them compete against themselves. And they love it. And they get fired up when they hit PRs, and we're going to kind of talk about that later. But tracking these things allows guys to compete against themselves. And as a coach, you can kind of, fuel that. So tracking progress, the golden question of any coach, right, is, are the hitters actually getting better? And HitTrax has a few tools for that. On the bottom, we have the session versus 6-month data sort of visual. So this is something our hitters look at a lot. And you can see down there where it says max velo 102. And then right to the right of that, it says 101. So basically during each batting session, the hitter will have their highest exit velo from that batting session. And to the right in the 6-month section, they have the highest from the previous 6 months. And that's true of max distance as well underneath. So this is really powerful because it sort of gives the player a rabbit to chase. That's their PR, and they're trying to hit PRs. And we have a bell at Driveline that we ring every single time someone hits a PR. And on HitTrax, if you do hit and a PR stands for personal record. If you do hit a ball like this hitter did, 102, it's the hardest ball he's hit in over 6 months. It lights up green, and that's kind of where the culture piece comes in, and everyone gets fired up. We got high fives and bells ringing and people going crazy. And I think it really helps kind of like cultivate that culture of competing against yourself and getting better. And HitTrax makes it really easy because everyone in the entire facility is going to know when you hit a PR, and it makes for pretty cool moments.
I couldn't recommend that more. Like you guys told me you do that, and across all levels, if you put something in there, whether it's a bell or a PR belt or something like that, something that creates that competitive environment. Because in this sense, you said it on the slide before, these guys are right now, they're competing against themselves, right? Which this allows you to compete against yourself. You don't have to be directly going against somebody head to head, but you're always trying to get yourself better. And I think you'll see right away when you start building that culture, those PR hits are going to become more and more frequent, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And the PRs aren't always max exit velo, like where you have distance there. Average velo, for guys that are focusing on precision or barrel control, that'll be their focus. Like, try and have your average velo above 90, or your hard hit average, your line drive percentage. So, and that's where the coach is so important. We kind of like direct the players' sort of intent, and we can use these tools to do that. So another tool that's extremely useful and something I use all the time is the session review. So this on the right is basically what a session review looks like. So at the end of a batting session, I'll pull the hitter over to the HitTrax computer, and we can go through their entire batting session. So it's automatically sorted by the first pitch to the last. but you can sort it by anything else. So velo, distance, result, and generally what I'll do is I'll sort by velo, go hardest hit ball down, and kind of talk through it with the player and say, okay, here are the balls you hit hard. Let's pull up the video. Let's compare. Like, what do you think? Grab one of their good swings, and then grab maybe a bad swing from earlier in the round. Do a side by side. We can look at point of contact here. I can click on one of these or click on a band and look at only balls hit out front compared to balls hit deeper in the zone, and then compare that video. You can go down underneath where you have those like colorful dots. You can select a range of exit velo. So let's just look at all the balls you hit harder, all the balls you hit softly, only the fly balls, only ground balls. Like, it's a tremendous tool for sort of doing analysis. And it's something our hitters love doing. Like, as soon as the session's over, they want to go ahead and say, okay, I felt really good at the end, and there was something off in the beginning. Can we just pull that video up real quick and kind of go through it? And it really helps track those KPIs. And then the video analysis tool is second to none. Like I said, you could just pick 2 swings from the session, or from this, you can even go back 2 years if you want, and go side by side and draw lines and click through frame by frame. And they're already synced at contact. It's truly a really, really incredible tool that we use all the time. And I think Andrew's gonna demonstrate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was going to. I think we got a good amount to get through, but so maybe I'll hold off on this, because the pages I was going to show are exactly what you're seeing. And like you said, you can filter through every stat there. And I was going to show you the example is literally these 2 swings side by side, but you sync them up so that you're watching them in sync, and the metrics from one hit specific to the metrics of another. And one last piece you can do on that is that you can, maybe you mentioned this, but you can isolate the strike zone, right? So if you're looking at pitches down and away, you can isolate only pitches in that quadrant of the zone and get hits comparative directly to each other there. So if I was going to share the software there, I think what we'll do is, if you want to see that, we'll probably run another demo this afternoon that will kind of go a little bit deeper into that, so we can just keep rolling.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we know hitters love looking at their swing and trying to associate the movements with what they're feeling. So this tool makes it pretty useful. And then you can save the video and send it to them too, which is something we do all the time.
Or check it out on the new HitTrax mobile app.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the big 3 of hitting. And basically, when we have all this assessment data, the whole idea is to try and use it to make the players better. And I guess a good question when we're trying to do that is understand, what do the best hitters do better than the rest? And when you take a skill like hitting, it's so dynamic. There's so much involved, right? You have, bat speed, you have precision, you have timing, vision, pitch recognition, plate discipline, mental toughness, resilience. Like, there's so much involved. But at Driveline, we bucket the skill into 3 sort of main focuses or main areas. One is bat speed, the other is barrel control, and the third is swing decisions. So these are the things that the best in the world do better than the rest. And the ones that are elite at all 3, those are your superstars, right? So if you take like the top 20, there's 3 guys. I think there's 3 guys in Major League Baseball that are top 20% in the league at all 3 of these things, and it's like Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and like Rendon or something like that. But for all your hitters, bucketing the skills into these 3 things really helps sort of understand, okay, like where are their focus areas. And I'm sure you coaches can already think about players that have good bat speed but don't have barrel control, or players that have bat speed and barrel control but maybe don't have swing decisions. And that's sort of like the basic fundamental structure of our system. So when we assess guys, we kind of grade them in those 3 areas, and then they get programming to improve on their weakness. So if you want to go to the next slide, Andrew. We're going to talk a little bit about how to assess the big 3 and what metrics to use. And I'm going to go quick because I think we're falling a little behind. But for bat speed, the metrics that you can measure are max exit velo, average exit velo, and distance. I think max is probably the best if you really want a proxy of bat speed. Average, it can be very dependent on the training environment, like if you're using a machine or flips or whatever. So I would encourage to do max exit velo as a proxy for bat speed, or just use a bat sensor. as well. That helps. Barrel control, some of the metrics, and Andrew talked about these earlier. We have line drive percentage. We have the average exit velo divided by max exit velo. So it's basically like an understanding of how consistently are you making contact and making hard contact, and you can compare that to your max. So if I hit a ball 90 is my max and Andrew's hitting a ball 120 is his max, our average exit velo in relation to how hard we can hit the ball is a good sort of measurement to see how consistently they're making hard contact, and then hard hit percentage as well. And as far as swing decisions, we have the obvious one, chase percentage, and performance with 2 strikes, and then some 9 zone drill that we're going to talk about a little later. So we can move on. So as far as training the big 3, bat speed training, I don't want to go into this into too much detail because there's a lot of content out there already about this. But basically, we do a lot of exit velo tracking. So with HitTrax, we track this, and we track it with weighted bats too. So we do weighted bat training, and I guess I can mention now that like in HitTrax, it's pretty cool. You can change the bat for each hitter. So if you're going to take a few swings with an overload and then an underload, you can actually go in there and switch and select underload bat, overload bat, and then you can track their exit velos with those bats over time. Using exit velo feedback is honestly a great way to increase the intent right away. And you'll see that when hitters get on the HitTrax for the first time, they'll swing and then look, and then they ramp up the intent, and it kind of takes care of itself. And then leaderboards. I'm a big believer in leaderboards. Putting things up all over the gym that encourage, the outcomes we want.
100%. The leaderboards is one of the best things that I see in facilities. Guys will put that up to start a week, and the kids will just go running over to it to see, who's top on the board. Do it for different age groups, for different skill levels. I couldn't be more of a proponent of that either for velo, distance, any other fun metrics, some gaming stuff. That's been a huge culture creator, if you will, to kind of get these kids competitive on your standard daily practices.
No doubt. So as far as training, I want to talk a little bit about some of the drills we do. So as far as barrel control, the first one is a launch angle ladder. It's one of my favorite drills. And this is a progression where you're challenging the hitter to hit balls at different launch angles, so different ball flights. So what I tell people and what I tell hitters often is that in a game, we want you to hit the ball hard on a line, obviously, but you should be able to hit the ball, especially in flips, at varying ball flights. Like, you should be precise enough. You should understand your bat path and your point of contact and where to hit the ball enough to manipulate ball flight. So maybe I don't want you to hit a ball at -10 degrees in a game, but you should be able to do that if I ask you to do that in a front toss or BP session. And it comes down to just being precise with your barrel. And the launching angle ladder is a good drill to sort of train that. So the way we do it is the hitter starts at 0 degrees. So they have to hit a ball within 4 degrees of 0. So from -4 to 4. And if they do that successfully, they move up to the next rung of the ladder, which is 10. And then they go to 20, and then they go back to 10 and 0. So we'll give them a round of 10, and we'll see how many rungs they can get. And you'll see your barrel control guys can do this pretty easily. They'll hit a ball and they'll hit it right at 0 and then 10, and they're able to manipulate ball flight. And the guys that really struggle with barrel control are going to have a hard time, and they might go a whole round and only hit 1 rung or whatever. And even your power guys, especially your power guys, you should be able to do that, especially on flips. And it's a fun little challenge for guys. And we could make it harder by changing the pitch, speed, the location, and you can start with just underhand flips. And if they get good at it, you can add more velo, maybe go over the top, start mixing in balls, and that kind of adds the swing decision aspect of it too. But it's a pretty good drill for guys to learn how to adjust ball flight and just be hyper precise on where they're striking the baseball.
So you've been doing these games and training competitions for quite a while, right? And we've been tracking the metrics that you create these games off of this entire time, right? years now. And I think this year is over the spring that I think Max Gordon kind of just finally stepped up and he's like, dude, make these games for us and let's see what we can do with this. So we put together some games and we kind of created some of our own, along with hitting drills, almost exactly, what you've described. And you can see the screenshots of that. So I'm going to actually share the software because I think this is kind of the culmination of this talk is using these drills to create a competitive environment that's going to push your players above where they typically, might be just training on their own or without some sort of technology or data. And also not necessarily needing to be playing a baseball game, although that is one of the things we'll talk about later too. This was the Connor Kramer case study that I was going to go into. So what we did is we took some of these drills and some of these games and actually put them into our software. So now this is a beta software. Please bear with me. Even the screenshot you saw that had the pink part of the field, I'm sure that will be changed. But we have a tab here that's called training games. So in training games, you can hit with your player profile every time. And we've always had this quality hit game, which puts a point value on the hits. That game has been there for quite a while. That'll stick in there. And we built this around the world game. So that is the game where you saw the pink field screenshot. Essentially, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to either pick for the player to start from the pull side or start from the opposite side. And their goal is to get as many hits in the field working around the horn as they can. And every hit that occurs to the left or the right of whichever the direction they want to go, the field will essentially close off and you'll have this targeted area to work from. So if your first hit, you hit a ball up the middle, you eliminate half of the field already and you reduce what you're going to be able to do going forward from there. So that's around the world. That is, you kind of described directional hitting. I think that's a big piece of this. We also have some various hitting drills in here, and the ladder drill that you discussed can actually be created. So I could make a new drill here, for example, and we'll just call this the ladder drill. And that bottom option is to hit a ball within a vertical range. I'm skipping over, hit line drive, hit ground ball, hit fly ball, which are still great. And you can select direction of the field. So if you want a guy to hit a line drive to the opposite field, you can do that for 10 reps. But at the bottom there, you have hit within a vertical range. So I can select this and say, okay, I want you to hit the first set of balls between 0 and 10 degrees. And we can set a minimum exit velocity that needs to be hit on those hits. So we can say maybe this every hit has to be 80 miles an hour or above. If you hit that category, you're going to get a point and it'll build towards a total accumulation of scores. And then you can build the next 10 swings, or maybe it's 5 swings, whatever it is, with the same specs, but now we change it from a 10 to a 20 degree vertical launch angle. So you're progressing through this ladder drill that you've described, but now we're automatically capturing it and reporting the success and failures of it, which I think will be a big piece of this, because if you get kids and players of all ages actually in the mindset of a competition, it's going to really help drive their success ultimately, and their desire to go back and do this again. So the last piece, which is pretty cool, is situational hitting. People have been asking about this for quite a while. I won't go into it now. I want to kind of get to this last slide and get some time for some questions. But we have our gaming module, which we'll mention here in a second. But what we've also created is situational hitting. So you'll be able to do repeatable scenarios where there's a runner on second, nobody out, and your goal is to get him to second, or a runner on third, and your goal is to score that runner. And you'll get a points scale based on your success on that. I think it'll be a scale from 0 to 5. So you're going to be able to create playlists, whether it's a pregame BP or a Tuesday practice set list of these situations, to put the player mentally in those spots and work on things like barrel control, getting jobs done, and also getting RBIs.
Yeah, and we love gamifying the skill development, and we do that with all our players, even professional players. They love it. Like we said, we love competing, and we try and compete in all our drills, even our flips and stuff like that. And the one drill I'll talk before we move on is low to high, because I really love that drill. It's one of my favorites. And the idea is it's similar to around the world, but the first ball you got to hit oppo. You got to hit at a low launch angle. So we'll do below 10 degrees. The next ball is hit up the middle to center field. And you want that to be sort of between 0 and 20. And then the third ball is to your pull side in the air. So the reason we do that is because if you look at the distribution of batted balls, especially bad hitters, they tend to hit a lot of flares and high fly balls to the opposite field and a lot of ground balls to the pull side. So this is a way of sort of working on those two things. And the best hitters in the game, they can hit balls low to the opposite field and they can hit balls high to the pull side. And not enough people work on, I think, those two things. And the ability to pull the ball high in the air. And I say high, I mean just in the air with backspin is hard. It takes practice and hitters should do it. And I think this sort of progression is really helpful in flips and MVP. And even our BP rounds are often on the field doing low to high. And it teaches players how to adjust their ball flight at different fields and just have barrel control. And I think there's really good things that does to your bat path, but I don't want to go into that because I'll go over time. Go to the next slide.
All right.
Oh, actually, depth ladder was another one. We put 3 balls on the ground. One is in the middle of home plate. This next one's in the front tip, and the next one is about 6 inches in front of home plate. And the hitter hits a ball at the back ball, and then middle, then out front. And they're learning to make contact at different points of contact depth-wise. So that's huge because in hitting, if you look at in-game point of contact data, it's pretty messy. Good hitters hit the ball really deep and really out front. And training by putting if you just put the ball on a tee out front in one point of contact and that's all you practice, it's just not going to help you in the game. And frankly, it's pretty stupid. So you should be able to do this progression and help you generate a wider margin of error for your point of contacts as a hitter.
So before you hop into this, just there was a cool little article on kind of your work in the Phillies with Mickey Moniak, who is a pretty up and coming prospect. So I'm excited about this portion of it because I know you did a lot of work. It sounded like he had 2 of the big 3 and maybe swing decision, especially in relationship to the zone, was something that he struggled with. And it sounds like from what you were telling me, he's not the only one that from the Phillies that really took to the strike zone portion of the software, not all the other stuff, but the strike zone, be able to get that feedback on every single pitch.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, the strike zone piece, I think is maybe the most valuable, especially for professional hitters that are trying to learn the zone. And, I won't go into too much detail, but Mickey, yeah, he was a guy that, and this is true for a lot of super good athletes and players, they've gotten away with swinging at everything their whole life because they're so athletic and they can do that when, you're facing a lower velocity. But at the end of the day, we're trying to prepare these guys to hit big league pitching. So you need to have an approach. You need to understand where your strengths are and kind of refine that game plan optimization essentially. So for guys like Mickey, the idea was understanding when you don't have 2 strikes, you're in the driver's seat. So we're going to eliminate chases. We're going to eliminate the outer third. And he's super aggressive, but getting him to be aggressive to his strength, especially until he got 2 strikes, was really the focus. And we used a lot of these drills and we used the HitTrax. And one of the ones I really liked was the 4-zone drill. So on this HitTrax, I should mention before that after every pitch, this visual is up there in the top right of the HitTrax, and it shows you precisely where the pitch crossed home plate. So the 4-zone drill is where I'd ask a hitter, pick a square, pick 4 of these 9 zones, and you're only allowed to swing when the balls are in that zone. And we'll gamify it. So we get 10 swings and we're going to try and go 10 for 10 on swing decisions. And in this drill, I don't care about the outcome. I don't care if you pop up or I don't care if you swing and miss, frankly. But if you make 10 good swing decisions, then it's a success. So we'll do the 4-zone drill. And we'll progress with difficulty of pitching. So we'll start with BP and then go to, mixed pitches, go to a machine. And it gets the hitters kind of hyper-focused on their strength. And that's a really good one to get the hitter to just add decision-making to their training, which it doesn't happen enough. Most guys go into hitting and they just kind of go in the cage and they're just swinging 100% of the time, which is not training this skill. The 9-zone drill is good too. It's where the hitter is, we usually start with just tracking. So they'll go in and they'll take a pitch and they'll have to tell me which of these 9 zones the ball is in. And we'll go 10 pitches and see how many they can get right. And then the progression, if they're good enough at that, they'll do the same thing, but they'll swing, and then they'll tell me, okay, that was up and away, and we number these 1 through 9, and they'll tell me, okay, that was a 4, that was a 9, and you'd be surprised how off a lot of these guys are because they just don't know the strike zone. And you mentioned the other guys. Like one of the guys I wanted to talk about was Alec Boehm, and he absolutely loves this feature because he he really wanted to learn the zone. And we talk about like him, for instance, when he first came in the Pro Bowl, he actually is interesting. He struck out looking a lot on balls that were out of the strike zone because the umpires in lower minor leagues aren't exactly the best. So for him, he's like, I really want to learn the big league strike zone. And he would use this every day. And he'd always ask me like, hey, make sure it's calibrated, because he'd go in and just take all these swings and look. And you start talking about like thousands of reps where every single pitch he sees, he's getting a precise location of the zone. And he used it to really learn, okay, that's where the outside corner is. That's where we'll ball off. That's 1 inch off. And he really, really understands the strike zone at a high level for someone as young as him. And that's a skill that typically it's understood it takes thousands of professional ABs before guys get it. But this technology helps expedite that process because, I mean, every rep you're seeing, you're getting feedback on exactly where that pitch was in the zone. So I think it's incredibly useful for that, just for learning the edge of the strike zone. I have on here count specific rounds. So we do a lot with swing decisions. We do a lot with adding count states. So all of our BP rounds will be either 2 strikes or not 2 strikes, because that changes the swing decision approach for a hitter. I mean, at least it should. So that's one thing we do with HitTrax is we make sure guys know, okay, your first 2 rounds of BP are going to be 2-0. Then we're doing 2 strikes. Then we add mixed pitches. So if you want to train swing decisions, you gotta mix pitches. Otherwise, it's just going to go on auto swing. And that's pitch type and also balls and strikes. So, we try and be at least like 60-40 strikes to balls in our training. And that could be hard logistically for coaches, I understand. But if you're really focusing on swing decisions with a player, there's value in mixing up locations, and we'll move the machine around. I'll loosen our machines so they're like just, wild enough to where they have to actually make swing decisions and they're not just on autopilot swinging.
I'll say that you're not the first person I've heard from this in Pro Ball that has a huge focus on the strike zone. I think for amateur coaches and, college coaches and high school coaches, everybody has a good feel for that, but I don't know if they quite see the emphasis that there is on the strike zone at that next level. That really is, I guess to take it to the next level, they really harp on the zone. And it's one of the things that I think is a super underrated piece of the software, is having an accurate strike zone just like that. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, and the thing Boehm loved too is the point of contact. So he's a hitter, and if you watch him play, like he can hit the fastball like out of the catcher's glove. That's something he trained, was hit fastballs deep so he can use the whole field. And he did that and he trained it with HitTrax. He was trying to hit balls at 0 to 6 inches on the point of contact depth, and then he would challenge himself to go even deeper and see if he can hit balls at good launch angles and hard exit velos at different bands of sort of point of contact. So let's go ahead and move on. So last slide, pretty much on competitions. I want to go through some of our go-to sort of games. I mentioned earlier we love gamifying our training. I think the best kind of environment is when the players are just competing and they're developing skills subconsciously. Like they don't even know that they're getting better. They're just out there having fun, getting after it and getting better in the process. So some of our go-to competitions we have here, the 2-inning game. I say this often, the best way to practice hitting is just to hit and play baseball. And HitTrax allows you to do that. We do a lot of just games. We'll pick players, go 2-on-2, and we'll play a 2-inning game. And on HitTrax, you can choose 9 innings, you can do whatever. And it's valuable for a lot of reasons because it creates a lot of teachable moments. So a lot of times the coaches will be pitching and we'll play a baseball game, and there'll be situations where maybe there's a runner on second and third in the 7th inning, and I threw you like a 3-2 breaking ball, and the hitter doesn't understand, and you can talk to him, say, hey, do you know why I threw you that pitch? There's an open base, or maybe last at bat you did this, and that's why I approached it this way. And it creates a lot of teachable moments. And that was advice given to me by a mentor of mine, just don't ever pass up on a teachable moment with a player. And I think these games allow a lot of teachable moments, especially when it comes to approach and sort of players learning how to hit and not just swing. On these videos here, you have a couple games. We did a competition with Trevor Bauer in the off season, and there was a whole competition that was all sort of based on HitTrax data. So we had five categories, and he threw, I think, like 8 times. And one of them was hard. If we ever hit a ball over 106, and this happened on the bottom video. Dan hit a ball, I think 106.5 or something, and you could see we're all getting fired up. And then on the top, like we had to hit one more home run on the final day to win the bet. And my dude hit a bomb out of Yankee Stadium, and you could see us all going crazy. And
we all know that video. We've seen that before.
Yeah,
that's one of the best videos.
Yeah. And that's how I got my name on his Players Weekend jersey. So.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, using HitTrax is how we did that. This Don't Be Average game is one of my favorites. So we'll do this at the end of hitting sessions often. We showed you earlier that bottom bar when guys hit, they have an average exit velo down there for the session. So at the end of the session, maybe it's 5 minutes, we'll do a game where we'll see how many balls you can hit in a row over your own average exit velo. So it's sort of like a game that's, decided, where the line is decided based on your own performance. And you'll see a lot of times players will kind of step up and make PRs in that Don't Be Average game, or build their average up simply because they're sort of competing and kind of ramping up the intent and the focus. We'll do line drive competitions, and we can quantify it. This is not something new to coaching. Coaches have been doing this forever. We'll see how many in a row they can hit, and we'll set a band of launch angles. So like we'll do 5 to 25 maybe, or if we want to open it up for less skilled hitters, we can do like 0 to 30. You can be creative in that. And then we can do how many out of 10, right? So if you have like 4 hitters, everyone's getting around a 10, who can get the most balls between 5 and 25 out of 10. The next one is base hit game. Again, something coaches have been doing forever. When you hit on HitTrax, it gives you a outcome based on just like their own algorithm. So you can just say, okay, how many hits can you get in a row? Or, you get 5 balls in play. Let's see how many hits you can get. And, put the whole group into a competition. And you can do the same thing with total bases. That's similar to the base hit game, except you're sort of like weighing extra base hits more. So you get 5 balls in play, total bases, guys with the most total bases win. And you can have some fun with that one. And then the bottom, you got to cut off, but it's situational hitting game. Like we talked about, like we'll make a script for sort of execution. So it's like, all right, you got to move a runner over. So the first task is basically hit a ball below 0 degrees to the opposite field. Next will be, okay, infield back. You got to hit a ball below 0 degrees to the center of the field. Then it's a sac fly situation, infield in. You got to hit a ball like 270 feet or further on the HitTrax. And you can be creative in sort of the situational hitting piece. And like Andrew said, they're building that module, but there's a ton of like little competitions you can get. And once you get really kind of handy with the technology as a coach, you can get creative. And the guys love this. Like this is something we did a ton this year with the Phillies, like especially in the alternate site where things were getting a little boring. We're seeing the same guys all the time. Oftentimes we play 1-2 inning games, and then we bring the hitters inside and we finish up the game on the HitTrax, and one of our coaches would pitch. And we did a lot of sort of competitions. We had brackets, so we'd put the guys in teams of 2 and play 2-inning games, and winners move on. And then we had a winner, and they got Chipotle cards. We called it the Chipotle Open. So there's a lot of ways we can do it. And like when you see these videos on the internet and stuff, I saw a comment the other day on a youth video of kids getting all fired up. Someone said, this is really cool for kids, but I don't think adults will do this. And I can tell you, like I've done this with big leaguers. They love it. They love competing. They love talking smack to each other. And a lot of times after our games, like they'll go and say, hey, you want to go compete? Me and you, let's go for lunch. Let's jump in the cage, play 2 innings and get the slider machine. And it's just really, really fun if you allow this sort of, coaching and training to happen with your players.
Yeah, that's a great story there. I was pumped to hear about the Chipotle Classic. I would love to, I think I'll probably create my own at some point. But I think in general, every one of these games and the games that we put in the software that will be coming out soon and everything, I think creating that environment that you see in these videos is a big piece of what you're shooting for. So we've got a couple questions. I think maybe what we should do, you want to rip through this last slide and then we can take the questions on our booth.
Whatever you think is best.
Let's do that. So I liked what you had here. If we take what you have here, and I've gotten the questions. Well, actually, it looks like maybe there's a few more coming in. Let's do that though. Let's do that because I'm gonna have to pull up the questions from my email. So let's go through this last slide, and then we'll carry this over to the HitTrax booth, and we'll go through all those questions. I've got a list of them already to rip through. So there we go.
Okay, so sort of rapid fire here. I wanted to highlight a little bit of the research we've done with HitTrax data over the years. And a lot of it stems from having paired data sets. So being able to take HitTrax data and pair it with a bat sensor or like KVS data, and we can generate some insights in how movement and batted ball profiles relate. So the first area was point of contact. So, looking at, okay, what changes when on deeper points of contact compared to more out front. Deeper, we generally have a lower attack angle, which makes sense because the swing is an arc and you catch it deeper in the swing arc. The swing works down and then it kind of gets to its low point and works up. So deeper point of contacts, we tend to have lower attack angles, lower bat speed, obviously, and lower time to contact as well. Rotational acceleration that was an interesting piece. So we kind of looked at, okay, hitters that are good at going oppo versus not. And the main piece was the ability to accelerate their barrel. And I think that the distinction is, two hitters could both hit a ball 75 miles an hour or have bat speed at 75 out front. But the best hitters are able to accelerate quickly and have a higher bat speed deeper in their swing arc. And that allows them to have better quality contact to the opposite field. So from like looking at good versus bad hitters to the opposite field, the rotational acceleration was the one metric that correlated really highly to success to the opposite field. So if you have guys that need work with that, you can kind of focus on that sort of KPI. Looking at launch position and heat map correlations is pretty interesting, probably pretty intuitive for most coaches. We saw that hitters that had their heat map and their nitro zones up in the zone, that was correlated to a flatter bat at launch. And we use a blast sensor to kind of measure early connection. So the guys that had a flatter path when they landed had more success on the high pitch. Guys that were more vertical had more success on the low pitch. And that makes sense from a physics standpoint. But I thought that was pretty interesting and something that could be applied to your coaching and could be applied also to game planning against hitters if you don't have an analytics team and you have to try and figure out where you want to pitch guys or which hitters you want to attack up in the zone or whatever. The last piece is probably my favorite is the batted ball biomechanics investigation. So one of the things we wanted to learn was how do hitters actually adjust to pitch height. So I was always taught to adjust with the legs, bend at the waist or whatever. But it turns out, the vast majority of the adjustment and the kinematics on successful high pitch batted balls versus low pitch is with torso side bend. So the best hitters are able to adjust how much they're bending during their rotation, torso rotation. So the hitters that can adjust well to pitch height have a higher variance in their ability to bend their torso during a swing. And conversely, the hitters that struggle with pitch height or maybe have maybe a very tight band of successful batted balls tend to have issues with adjusting their side bend. And there's some like mobility and strength implications there. And there's drills that we do to help sort of like discover those new movement patterns and learning how to add that side bend during the swing. And then lastly, oppo versus pull batted balls. We see that successfully hit batted balls to the opposite field have less torso rotation. So an important piece of hitting is the timing of when the upper body stops, because when the upper body starts to slow down and decelerate, it kind of catapults the hands and the bat into the hitting zone. So on oppo swings, good hitters that can hit the ball oppo, they stop their torso sooner, and that sends their swing direction into out and out to the opposite field. And for pull, same thing. Good hitters are able to rotate more. So the guys that can adjust and hit balls well to both fields, they're able to change when they kind of slam the brakes with their torso. And again, conversely, the hitters that maybe really struggle with a certain field, they kind of have the same exact kinematics with their torso every time, and that creates sort of like glancing blows to right field and an inability to sort of like stay through the ball and adjust their swing direction. So I hope we made it in time. Got 1 minute.
You got it in. I appreciate it. So if you guys want, Richard, I saw you raise your hand twice. Let's hop over, meet us at the HitTrax booth, and we'll take your questions. I've got the ones that were written down in the chat too. So we're right at the buzzer. But again, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. All of the session review and in terms of creating a competitive environment with those games. Thank you, and look forward to working together and hearing more from you in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate all the help over the years. And thanks for all you guys for coming in.